Konnichiwa! Welcome back. In this video, we will study new Japanese grammar from the Minano Nihongo Lesson 5. それでは始めましょう。So here are the grammar points that we would learn in this lesson. The first one is how to say I'll go to an or a place. The pattern is place followed by the particle e, which is a hiragana he but pronounced as e. This indicates the direction of the verb, such as ikimasu, go, kimasu, come, kaerimasu, return. For example, I will go to the supermarket. So using the pattern, let's start with the place, supermarket, super, followed by the particle e, and then the verb go, ikimasu, super e ikimasu. Another example, I came to Japan last year. First, we will begin with the expression of time, which is last year, kyonen, followed by the place, which is Japan or Nihon, and then the particle e, and lastly the verb came, which is kimashita. Kyonen Nihon e kimashita. Next example, I'll go back home next week. Again, let's begin with the word next week, raishu, followed by home, which is uchi, and then e, and lastly the verb go back, which is kaerimasu. Raishu uchi e kaerimasu. And lastly, how to ask where are you going? So the Japanese word for where is doko. Doko e ikimasu ka? Doko e ikimasu ka? Where are you going? Or where will you go? Next is how to say go nowhere or went nowhere. Doko followed by mo actually means everywhere, but if it's followed by a negative verb such as ikimasen, which is the negative of go or meaning don't go, or the past tense of that is didn't go or ikimasen deshita, doko mo becomes nowhere or not anywhere. For example, where are you going next week? Which is raishu doko e ikimasu ka? Let's say I'm not going anywhere. So first, not anywhere is doko mo. Not going is ikimasen. Doko mo ikimasen, or watashi wa doko mo ikimasen. Another example is using the past tense. Where did you go last week? Senshu doko e ikimashita ka? I didn't go anywhere. Using the same pattern, not anywhere or nowhere is doko mo. Didn't go is ikimasen deshita. Doko mo ikimasen deshita, or watashi wa doko mo ikimasen deshita. You can also use this with other interrogative words such as nani, for example, nani mo. And also you can attach mo to who or dare. Dare mo means no one. Next is how to say go or come or go back by n. N is a vehicle or a mode of transportation. We use this pattern, en de. De means by, followed by the verb ikimasu, kimasu, or kaerimasu. For example, I'll go by train. First, let's start with the vehicle. Train is densha, followed by the particle de, and then the verb go. Ikimasu, densha de ikimasu. I'll go by train. Another example is using the past tense. I came by taxi. First, the vehicle is taxi, or in Japanese, takushi, followed by de, and then the verb came, kimashita. Takushi de kimashita. Next, I went home from school on foot, or I walked home from school. So first, let's say from school. Gakko kara. On foot is aruite. Notice that we didn't put de. On foot is aruite. Followed by went home, which is kairimashita, the past form of kairimasu. Gakko kara aruite kairimashita. And lastly, how do you ask what mode of transportation do you use to go to a certain place? For example, how do you go to his house? By bicycle. So first, let's say his house. Kare no means his and uchi means house. So kare no uchi e, the particle for direction, followed by how or what mode of transportation. Nan de. And then lastly by the verb go. Ikimasu. And then the question marker ka. Kare no uchi e nande ikimasu ka? If you want to say by bicycle, bicycle is jitensha. By bicycle, jitensha de. Or you can say jitensha de ikimasu. Next is do verb with a person or an animal. We say en to. To is the particle meaning with, followed by verb. If you remember, to is also used to connect nouns. En1 to en2. Now, using this pattern, let's take a look at some examples. The first one, she goes to school with Maria. So first, the subject is she. Kanojo wa. And then followed by en to verb. So here, en is Maria. Maria-san. To. Then school, which is gakko. Gakko e, to school. Ikimasu, goes. Kanojo wa Maria-san to gakko e ikimasu. So, she, with Maria, to school, goes. Kanojo wa Maria-san to gakko e ikimasu. So, as you can see, there are many elements in this sentence. First is the subject, and then dare-dare to, and then doko-doko e. So, I would just like to explain the structure of the Japanese sentences. Always remember that the subject comes first. The subject could be the doer of the action, or the object of the action, or what or who is being described in the sentence. So always starts with the subject. If it's you or I, you don't have to say it. But if it's she or he or they or someone, you can always start with dare-dare wa, followed by the other elements such as Maria to or gakko e, and then lastly the verb. Next example, he went to Germany with his family. He is kare. Kare wa, and then with his family. Kazoku to. So I didn't put kare no kazoku or his family because I think it's already obvious in the sentence. So I just put kazoku. Kazoku to Germany is doitsu. Doitsu e ikimashita. Went. Kare wa kazoku to doitsu e ikimashita. Now to ask, who did you go to a place with? Or in this example, who did you go to London with? Who is dare, followed by to. With who? Dare to. and then the place, London e. And lastly, the verb did go, ikimashita, and then the question marker, ka. Dare to London e ikimashita ka? If you want to say by myself or alone, you say hitori de. Or the complete sentence is I went by myself. Hitori de ikimashita. So you've already learned other interrogative words such as what or nani, who, dare, and where, doko. Now you will learn the interrogative word when, itsu. So this is just a general way of asking when something will happen or when something is. Also, regarding the time, you've learned how to ask what time, nanji, and what minute, nanpun, also what day, nanyobi, and so on. Let's take a look at some examples. Number 1, when are your family coming? So, the subject here is the family, or the doer of the verb is the family. So, let's begin with the subject, which is kazoku, kazoku wa, followed by the interrogative word when, itsu, and then the verb coming or come, kimasu. Kazoku wa itsu kimasu ka? On December 25th. December 25th is 12月15日, followed by the particle of time, which is ni, because there is a numeral in the answer. Next, when will you go back? So we will start the sentence with when, itsu. Go back is kaerimasu, and then the question marker ka. Itsu kaerimasu ka? For example, the answer is I'll go back next year. Next year is 来年, followed by the verb kaerimasu. 来年帰ります. For words next year or next week, we don't need the particle ni. And lastly, how do you ask someone's birthday? When is your birthday? Birthday is 誕生日. 誕生日は itsu, and then the polite way of asking ですか? 誕生日はいつですか? For example, the answer is on January 3rd. January 3rd is 1月3日, followed by です. 1月3日です. Lastly, sentence followed by yo. Yo is added at the end of the sentence to give it more emphasis. It acts like an exclamation mark. For example, hey, I'm going, or I'm going. I'm going is ikimasu. And if you want to give more emphasis, you add yo. Ikimasu yo. It's like saying, just so you know, I'm going, okay? Ikimasu yo. Another example is, it is, or that's right. For example, hey, I heard that it's nice in Germany. It is. So desu yo. So desu yo. Another example, hey, it's delicious. If you want to give more emphasis, oishii yo. Hey, you know, it's delicious. It's like saying, hey, you should try it, it's delicious. Oishii yo. Now let's go over the lesson one more time. So the first one, we've learned how to say go to a place. So, for example, watashi wa, or you can drop the subject and just say Super e ikimasu, Nihon e kimasu, Uchi e kaerimasu. And you can also ask the question, Anata wa, or Doko e kimasu ka? Next, we've learned how to say not go anywhere or go nowhere by adding mo before doko. Doko mo. For example, watashi wa doko mo ikimasen, or どこも行きませんでした。Next, we've also learned how to say go by mode of transportation. For example, 電車で行きます。タクシーで行きます。歩いて帰ります。So, for 歩いて, we don't need the particle で。And also how to ask なんで行きますか? Next, how to say go with a person or an animal. For example, マリアさんと行きます。家族と来ます。友達と帰ります。Or to ask the question, with who? 誰と行きますか? Next, the interrogative word when, followed by the verb. For example, 来週行きます。明日来ます。1月3日 followed by the particle of time which is に then the verb 帰ります and lastly how to ask when or いつ行きますか and lastly sentence followed by よ to show emphasis. For example 行きますよそうですよおいしいよ Okay, now time for conversation practice. I will ask you some questions based from the lesson, so please try to respond in Japanese. 明日どこへ行きますか? 電車で学校へ行きますか? 電車で仕事へ行きますか? 誰とデパートへ行きますか? あなたのお誕生日はいつですか? So that's it for today's lesson. If you have any questions or clarifications, please comment down below. I would love to hear your feedback. And please subscribe if you don't want to miss any of the future lessons. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next lesson. Mata ne!